And we're live on this Thursday evening with Scott's Weather. Scott Stevens here to join you on this afternoon. It's just a lovely August around the country, hot where it should be, and we've got a few showers in the southeast. A few showers. We got a lot of rain down there, a lot of clusters of those showers and thunderstorms. And then, as I kind of mentioned yesterday, or it even could have been the day before, a little mid-level circulation center off the Carolinas looks like it's getting a little more organized, and that may eventually extend down to the coast. And if that were to create a surface circulation, we would have our 10th named storm of the Atlantic season. And we've already achieved the ninth today, that being Josephine, and already the earliest ninth named storm, or the letter J, that we've seen in Atlantic history. So kind of interesting to see how quickly this is developing, even in or especially because of a La Nina situation that is underway across the oceans. And those oceans are so big in impacting how, let's just say, tropical weather then impacts the land or doesn't, depending on the scenario and the situation. All right, we'll hit Twitter fairly quickly because there's just not a lot that's new out there. A lot of what's happening in Twitter feed is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 days old, and I'm like, come on, Twitter, pull your head out of somewhere dark and refresh these feeds because it's just this side of ancient. Out in Germany, out in the water, this wasn't going to say wild boar, so you could just see what it is for your own. It's like some seal, some orca, something, but just a boar that obviously had a very long duration swim. And okay, where do I go? How do I get through this gauntlet of humanoids with their baskets of food? And I'm kind of hungry. And then he wanders through and just looking for some safety and maybe someone else that looks like it does. And there we are. Josephine is formed in the Atlantic, becoming the earliest J storm in history. And of course, the Weather Channel, always live. Well, usually they've interjected so much programming now you've got to wonder at times if they're truly still the Weather Channel, but I digress. That's what happens when big corporations buy startups. They mold it into something they believe everybody can watch 24/7. But there it is, Josephine out in the Atlantic. Pressure still about 1005 millibars, moving west-northwest at 15. And then this is the other area. I spy with you. A little swirly close to land, rainmaker for now, but don't do anything I wouldn't. Tropical storm development, unlikely. But then it gets up here and it could still happen. So now that we have Josephine in place, two crews of the reserve citizen airmen hurricane hunters have made like trees, and they've gone to St. Croix where they're scheduled to fly some fixes through Tropical Storm Josephine. They'll drop their radio songs on and just have a look-see as to what is in store for the rest of us up in that area. So, and that truly is just about it. Severe thunderstorms hit Scotland last night, the longest monsoon in Korea for 33 years. We've seen that one. Hey, Vicky and Karen, my camera still wants to drop. I kind of think it's my digital converter box from HDMI to USB. And as warm as it is lately, I think it might even be a heat issue rather than something else. So you just don't know until the heat's gone. I'm sitting at 85 here in the office, so that's a little toasty. If we had quiet fans, I might throw one up. All right, it's Thursday. The drought monitor is issued in the mornings on Thursday, and it's something I'm interested in. And when you look at this, it doesn't look that good. There's a lot of S and L. That means short-term, and then L for long-term dryness in these locations. So a good chunk of the Rockies is in drought situation, the only exception being the Snake River Basin, then into the Treasure Valley, and then central and northern Idaho, and then a fairly good sizable chunk of Montana in pretty good shape. But otherwise, west of the 100th parallel, it's not good. And the monsoon has been puny. If I want to be generous, it's just been nearly non-existent, and that has allowed fires to crop up. And even with those strong thunderstorms earlier in the week across Iowa, it wasn't enough water. Those things, as we saw with the winds and the damaging winds, just simply moved too fast to deliver much more than a quarter to at most a little more than a half-inch worth of rain. So there just isn't a lot of recovery, and the dryness in Iowa begins to kind of grow. And same with the hurricane that made landfall in South Carolina, then slowly cropped up the eastern seaboard, Isadora. It was the eye storm. I'll leave it at that. Just left much of New England high and dry with temperatures at or slightly above normal. And we'll start in the Pacific. Got a couple of disturbances out there. One, the formation, about 20% over the next 5 days, or 50% of the next 5 days, but 20% of the next 48 hours. Tropical 10E, likely to develop a little more quickly. This advisory was issued by the National Hurricane Center. And then we get off the coast of Mexico, a little more action there as well. And then the Atlantic, we have developing Josephine out there off the Windward Islands. And then this disturbed area that we'll always will watch as well. It's close to shore, so we have radar coverage of that, but the formation over the next 5 days also is rather weak. But it's the temperatures. And that's what most of us are dealing with in the present, is just the heat. Texas, Oklahoma, hot, except for northeastern Oklahoma into green country, where temperatures still upper 80s, but the humidity's in place, so that still puts the heat indices every bit of 100 degrees. And it is every bit of 100 degrees in the lower Colorado River Valley with Needles and Palm Springs and El Centro and Thermal, Phoenix, Tucson, all over 110 degrees. Montana, Yellowstone, 69. That's not so bad. That's very comfortable. But then they're up with some clouds and the better part of 8,000 feet. Also some showers developing in western Montana. Also with some moisture kind of feeding into the mid-California coastal area. And there's some returns on the radar, but nothing terribly impressive, enough to just bring us some relief from the heat. And then the high plains of Colorado, but mostly into western Kansas, we're seeing some storms. I was kind of looking over here to see what was happening with that circulation, but there's just not a lot to look at. Let me see. Can you see where I am right in the middle of the screen? Yeah, right in through there. There's just not a whole lot happening. Fires, this is all a big plume of smoke across central Utah from Southern California fires, and then 2 raging fires in Colorado. Those are right now nowhere near contained. It's going to be a little bit before that happens, and the monsoon no farther north than, say, middle of New Mexico. So it just leaves us thirsty for some water. Rains off the coast of California, but even on land, that's probably not enough other than to just mess up the vehicles and leave some things spotted. It'll smell good, and that's probably the extent of it. Lovely summer day in York, PA, says Karen, with a bit of a summer shower. That's always nice. And then Marlene, trying to what, mess up your food? It happens. It happens. As we saw with Iowa, that was a devastating storm, and it has gotten so little press, really so little press, because a little more attention to that could bring at least some solutions or discussion. But there's so many weak spaces in our food chain that we just on a small scale we're beginning to discuss, but on the bigger picture, it's not even on the agenda. And likely the way national politics is, it won't ever end up on the agenda until it is in a crisis situation. There's your humidity. Where it is green, dew points are above 60 degrees, and at least West Texas with those incredible temperatures, way into triple digits. The humidities are a little bit lower. The dew points are dry. You get the Midland at 104 degrees with a dew point of 48, but then you get along the Gulf Coast where temperatures are a little bit cooler, 90, 92, 93, but the dew points are at about 80, and that leaves the heat indice over 110 degrees. As we move out a couple of days, where we're looking at the risk of severe weather, this is for today, Thursday, the far northern Mississippi Valley, along the middle Atlantic coast, and then a few spots where we have some frontal interaction. And then tomorrow, it's mostly the mid and upper Mississippi Valley, primarily the upper Mississippi Valley. But as we look through the southwest, the risk of showers just is nearly non-existent as the monsoon is kind of shut down. Maybe a few more widespread showers on Saturday, but then that'll be accompanied by just heat. These were near records today. We go into Friday. Look at that. Just Abilene, Texas, 106. Albuquerque, 97. Alamosa, Colorado, 87. Austin, 103. Childress, Texas, 107. Dallas, 105. Dalhart, 105. Imperial, California, 116. All of these within 1 degree of the record high or over that threshold. San Antonio, 103. Stevensville, Texas, 106. And then for Saturday, the heat extends up to Portland at 100 degrees, Marfa at 107, Marfa, Texas. So, and then Sunday, the heat goes on. And Monday, the heat remains in place with some of the northern Rocky locations. Boise at 102, Burns, Oregon, 99, Baker, Oregon, 102, Las Vegas at 113, Imperial, 115, Pocatello at 99, Reno, 98, Sacramento, 106, Stockton, 105, Tucson, 109. For this coming Monday, it goes on into Tuesday and into Wednesday as well. So nearly a full week with record heat out there. So those firefighters could use a break when you look at the precip forecast and run it out about 10 days, the 240-hour period. There's very little precip out west, just a few hundredths here and there. And where it does fall, it tends to be localized. The ground has become hydrophobic, meaning it's too dry to absorb the moisture. And what we end up with is a slurry running down the arroyos. And then once the water just is beaten up and gone, and then you come back the next day and it's dry. It's as if it didn't even rain, except for the damage and the dust kicked up by the rain. It's really kind of backwards how that happens, but the monsoon is very, very puny. And then at least through the 24th of August, very little even in the Northern Rockies. Canada, doing great. Maybe that's the new place to be as the water and the climates begin to do their shifting. Seems like we've got heavier rains down in the southern latitudes and then also into the more northern latitudes with high pressure kind of anchored in place. There's one last map I wanted to show you, and this is going to pop over to China just because it's such a big deal. Much of the plains closer to the coast look like they begin to dry out. But then the rains focus farther west than they have fallen, but closer to the headwaters of the rivers in those higher elevations into eastern Tibet. Not quite up into Mongolia, but nevertheless eastern Tibet. And then even from Bangladesh, southern Pakistan, all through northern India, way, way above normal precip actually going to happen in those mountainous regions. So the flooding stories are not yet done. It's just the places that have been getting the rains are shifting farther inland, farther up the watersheds, and that will ensure that at least through the next 15 days, these aggressive, incredible rains continue to fall. So I'm concerned that we're going to see numerous dam failures in China ultimately before all is said and done. All right, back home, out the next 6 to 10 days from the Climate Prediction Center. The heat goes on out west, cool through the lower Mississippi Valley. And in that climate report, this was kind of the pattern that they had said, that down in this region, temperatures were between 4 and 8 degrees cooler than normal, with at or above normal precipitation where it did fall, whereas the west remained high and dry. And that seems to be the way it's going to stick with us. Yeah, Vicki, it's cooking. And you know what? It's 5:12. It's dinner time. And it's time to go cook. All right, we'll do this once again tomorrow. Catch y'all up on what's going on, see if we've got any crazy weather stories to discuss, bring to your attention. The flooding is not done. There's some satellite imagery of some of these reservoirs, these dams in China, where there appears to be, it's not a guarantee, but there appears to be some cavitation happening underneath the dams where we're seeing some, bubbling, and some, literally the term is cavitation. And once that happens, it tends to fail rather quickly. I was privy to a dam failure, the Teton Dam disaster in 1976 in eastern Idaho, where it was an earthen dam, and it's nothing like these Chinese dams, or at least the Three Gorges Dam. But when it went, despite the bulldozers and all the heroics, once you get the leaks and there's a way for the water to get through it, where one drop goes, there's a second drop, a third, and then there's 30, and then there's 300, and then there's 300,000, and then you have a problem, and it happens very quickly. All right, guys, thanks so much. Yeah, Pakistan, it's crazy. It's those places that are dry, that are up against those not the Himalayas, but all the way through all those mountain ranges and those coastal nations along the Indian Ocean, where they have those 20, 30,000, well, not quite 30,000, but very tall mountains up to their north. And it is those locations where they're now forecast to get the bulk of the precipitation. So those mountainous communities where there isn't a lot of floodplains for the waters to slide out, no, the water comes out of those very, very aggressively down those rocky canyons and so forth. All right, guys, dinner time. Thanks, Karen, for the comments, and I'll see you all tomorrow, and we'll wind up the week. Have a great evening, everybody. Keep looking up.